Friday, that means it's time for your view from the C-suite here on Classic Business, bringing you closer to the country's business and political economy leaders to find out what makes them tick, what keeps them up at night and keeps them going through the COVID lockdown storm. Well, my guest this week is one of the leading voices for youth employment in a country which has the unenviable record as a world leader in youth unemployment. She started 4 businesses, served as a business school faculty, lecturing in innovation and management and inclusive business for over 8 years in South Africa, in Rotterdam, and at the Kelley School of Business in the US. She's co-authored a book called New Markets, New Mindsets, along with several case studies and research papers based on company innovation. Locally and internationally, her career has really focused on innovation, inclusive business, digital training and behavioral research. And along the way, some awesome apps and content have emerged from this work, with over 13,000 marginalized youth clocking close to 5 million minutes of online business training on smartphones over a year and across the country as one of the standouts. Tashmia Ismail-Saville is the CEO of the Youth Employment Service, which, as we know, is a joint initiative between business and government that really is all about addressing South Africa's apex challenge, that is youth unemployment. Tashmia, welcome to The View.
Hi, Michael.
Now, before we talk about Yes, I'd just like to find out a little bit more about your story, which is an interesting one because you qualified as a dentist at Wits way back in 1997, just before the dot-com boom bust. And then you built and managed your own successful practice with a strong focus on primary, pediatric and family healthcare. Were there doctors in the family that led you in that particular direction?
Yes, Michael. My dad is a gynecologist. Can I make a very rude joke? He took one end and I took the other.
So what then saw you, coming from a family of doctors, turn around and say, this isn't quite for me after putting in all the hours, qualifying, having your own practice? What saw you transition from dentistry to business innovation at Gibbs?
So, medicine is very exciting to study. When you're at university, the subjects are incredibly interesting: physiology, anatomy, and we did a lot of head and neck. I'm not a fan of stereotypes, but there is one stereotype that holds true anywhere in the world, and that is Indian mothers. So I found myself steered into a medical direction, which I didn't mind because the studying was exciting, by my mother saying it would be a good career for a woman. But being in practice, what excited me was setting up the practice. This was Asian crisis time, 1997, if you recall, and interest rates in South Africa were 22.5%. Swallow that, all you people who complain about interest rates.
Talk
today.
About cost of capital to start a business. Wow.
Absolutely. And I was this very young, straight out of varsity, 23 and a half years old, and starting my practice. And of course, everything is imported from Germany and Austria and Switzerland in the dental world. It's very sophisticated equipment. And I had to take leases out. But, once I really had the business pieces down in my practice and it was really successful, I started getting frustrated with the humdrum nature of it. And so decided to apply for a scholarship at Gordon Institute, which gratefully the universe was telling me I was on the right track. I won the scholarship and proceeded to really, really learn about the world at that point. An MBA is a great way to go from deep specialization into really having a good general idea of the way business functions.
Because you thought you didn't have enough student debt at the time, Tash, you decided to go into an MBA. And that obviously sparked this real love affair with entrepreneurialism and business. Now, you've started 4 businesses. What else apart from the medical practice?
I started a consulting practice, which was called Boundless. Did some exciting work with pharmaceutical companies, FMCGs, and financial services, helping to craft business models for mass market segments. Very exciting work that I did there was we use design thinking tools when we build these business models. And I started to understand the rhythm of what happens in informal economies, the gaps that are sitting in our small businesses in South Africa around business literacy that really stunts them from growing. If you look at global numbers on the contribution of small business to employment and GDP, it's massive. It's over 80%. And you come into South Africa, and here we have very, very lagging indicators on our small businesses. and how those small businesses are able to create jobs and drive GDP. So what were these gaps and how could we address them? And the way to do that was digital learning. So I started to experiment with digital platforms to train businesses or entrepreneurs in business. Figured out, using my business school as a curriculum as a backbone, how do we create a mini MBA that helps these business owners fill those gaps, but they're able to do it with a mentor in their pocket. It's drip-fed. Entrepreneurs are not the type of people that enjoy sitting in classrooms, and you're not going to get them there to sit in these boot camps that we told work, these entrepreneurial boot camps. How can we drip feed through storytelling, because these are the behavioral tools that work? How can we drip feed and help them understand? And so we developed for two companies a business literacy course available on a smartphone, mixed media with telenovela-type soap operas, and the lessons built into that. So that was a very exciting time for me because I was playing with both digital and behavioral economics research. Another business that I built was I took the first laser machine into Polokwane, beauty laser machine. And I had a beauty practice there as well, which was one of my businesses. I didn't run that hands-on. I managed it from a distance, but had some beauticians working in it. So those were some of my entrepreneurial forays.
And talk about a foray into varied fields as well. Now, we know entrepreneurialism and small business really lie at the heart of unlocking this country's potential. And you've now focused with the Youth Employment Service on youth unemployment. But I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Anne Bernstein of the Centre for Development and Enterprise earlier this week. She's written a chapter in a new book edited by Raymond Parsons and focusing on our jobs crisis, on unemployment and how do we create employment. And she really mentioned some critical gaps in South Africa that mean we, without addressing these structural challenges, won't really be able to overcome this structural nature of our unemployment crisis. And the three main issues she points to are the scarcity of skills, and that obviously drives up the cost of skilled labor in the economy, and these speak to the cost of employment in the country. There's a variety of non-wage costs of employment in compliance with employment laws and employment equity laws, and we've also got a system of wage-setting institutions that has the effect of pushing up wages, things like bargaining councils, where the agreements of those bargaining councils are then shared amongst all firms in that sector, even if you're not a party to the bargaining council. She's obviously got a particular view on the employment market. What would you add to that as the key structural impediments in South Africa to absorbing this growing army of youth who are disenfranchised, Tash? They're desperate. There was just today a protest by graduates saying that even our graduates are now really struggling to find work. What are the structural issues that you would like the government to focus on now to really start helping unlock some of these challenges?
Absolutely, Michael. I mean, those are on point. I would add that in addition to what we're seeing with youth, psychological impact, the depression, the anxiety. We did a Voice of Youth survey that we put out. All of our Yes Youth are placed with a smartphone in the country. We've created over 37,500 jobs in the past 18 months. And our youth have zero-rated smartphones. We did a survey with them in COVID, and 2 out of 3 are talking about feeling depression and anxiety. These are frightening statistics. I would argue that one of the biggest structural issues we face is access into jobs for young people. I do think we make a little bit too much of highly skilled individuals. There's a big literature that talks about the power of learning by doing, and just by getting young people into jobs, quite often you're able to find a good fit and you can skill a person up on the job. Now, we don't, given the labor laws that you've discussed, dismissal costs are one of the big issues for smaller businesses. We know that smaller businesses will be the best place for young people to get those first opportunities. They're willing to hire youth when they have lower skills levels. But unfortunately, for a small business owner, the emotional costs, the physical costs of trying to rid your business of a worker who hasn't worked out, or if you're having a business dip, is incredibly expensive. And that often acts as a barrier to them hiring in the first place. Now, with a program like YES, the design is there to allow businesses to take youth on for a fixed-term contract. This fixed-term contract of a year means that if the youth is not a great fit, you aren't stuck. You can try someone else, or if you take a big enough cohort in there, what a lot of businesses are telling us is that they find gems if they're able to take on a bigger cohort and then look for best fit. And then they make a deeper investment in that young person. Because businesses do need young people. They need the fresh thinking. They need to be able to transfer skills. The businesses that have taken these chances on youth, most of the time are coming back to say this was a really good idea. We're thrilled with the youth that we've brought on. They really have given us a fresh perspective. But, my sense of some of the barriers are dismissal costs are a big issue. The other is that the training of youth, sometimes the technical stuff you're willing to train on the job, but we have no bridging of youth who can come from extremely informal surroundings, have parents who haven't worked. Many youth come from households where no adult is working. And we're asking them to make this massive leap into a highly formalized professional space. So this idea of training people on soft skills, essential skills, many employers are saying to us, let's get that right. It makes it easier for us to integrate them in the workforce. But, look, the biggest issue is economic growth. If we don't make economic growth happen by, firstly, getting rid of lockdown, that would be a very good start. It's very difficult for businesses to have the confidence to actually hire people if you're not sure where the economy is going. So I think we need to do a few small things just to get business to regain confidence that we're going in the right direction before we have any hope that they're going to be increasing their payrolls.
I can't stress enough how much I agree with your last point around confidence. Just speaking to the CEO of Renogen, Stefano Morani, this week about studies that they've done and looking at where business confidence levels are at the moment, the lowest level that we've seen in the post-World War period in South Africa. But if you were to start to see business confidence ticking up, you'd see businesses investing again, gross fixed capital formation increasing, and some real opportunity start to flow from there. But it all stems from confidence. And back to your earlier point about the lockdown, I cannot believe that we find ourselves here, Tash, having this conversation a day out from when the national state of disaster is legislated to end. And we're still all in the dark, wondering when or if the president will address the country and take us into his confidence and let us know whether it will be extended. What's going to happen? Will certain industries be allowed to trade again? Are we going to go into level 2? One cannot build confidence in a society where the leadership seems to be all over the place. It started so well. There were then these regulations that were really incoherent. The modeling has now been questioned and clearly was based on the incorrect assumptions. All of this feeds into a growing sense of doom and gloom around the country. And you can throw into the pot corruption as well. And I hate to be a killjoy on a Friday, but how does a business, how do you as an entrepreneur get up in the morning and dust all of that off and say, right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put it to one side and I'm going to try and make my business work. And then the lights go out. It's frustrating to say the least.
Yes, look, I'm fortunate. The work that I do, the work that YES does, is to give young people that first chance at a job. Making those first chances happen for young people has just become extraordinarily difficult with COVID. Having said that, during lockdown, we've had 105 businesses register for YES. So there are still businesses who are not going to be taking young people on if they didn't see a future. That gives me some hope. The second is this work is just too important to say, I'm frustrated and I'm going to stop. This is not an equal or fair country. Where you're born matters. some young people just have no access to economic opportunity. And the fact that we've been able to give 37,500 young people that chance at that first job, we see the impact of that. It's 1.7 billion rand going back into youth wallets from Yes salaries. Our youth have been telling us they've been supporting increasing numbers of people in their households, neighbors, friends, extended family with that Yes salary, given the number of jobs that have been lost in their communities with lockdown. So there's some jobs where you've got to just get up and work as Business South Africa, work as Team South Africa. And what I'm hoping is that we are able to get it together and work with government to really push this along. Unfortunately, Michael, as frustrating as it is, there is no other option but to move forward. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do?
Absolutely. If your businesses are invested here, then you've got to stay and make it work, and I think make a difference as well while you're doing that. But it does, I think, in times like these, it does become increasingly difficult to dust off that cynicism. Now, we can also be creative here, because instead of some of the bailout funds, perhaps, that we've seen that have been set up that are sometimes difficult to structure and process, we could tweak things like enterprise and supply development channels. Currently, businesses pay between 1% and 3% of their net profit after tax into these channels. Surely an easier way could be to move money to smaller businesses through a direct mechanism to help them secure their value chain, rather than going into paying money into SETAs and other areas where you don't know where the money's going. That could help feed youth employment service programs like Yes. Surely we need to start thinking a little bit more creatively and differently about how we solve this problem.
Spot on, Michael. So Yes works to give companies a whole BE level up if they invest in youth jobs. But increasingly, what we're doing is structuring their scorecards. So if you are able to use enterprise and supply development along with these Yes jobs that you create, you really have a beautiful combination of scorecard elements that can be quite powerful, both in terms of growing your business somewhere in your value chain, and in terms of job creation. So our Yes hubs, we've got the Alex, Saldanha, and Tembisa Yes hubs. Alex is opening on the 5th of September, Saldanha on the 1st of September, and Tembisa will be reopening in November. We've had to shut things down with lockdown. But what we're doing there is using big company enterprise and supplier development spend. Some of our sponsors are Microsoft, Investec, Sanlam, Netcare is a big funder of the Alex model. And they are supporting through these structures, the infrastructure we're putting up, a host of small businesses. So Netcare, for example, are working with us on an enterprise called Hiruko, and they are going to be opening market access for Hiruko to supply into Netcare. We're starting with baby blankets. We're talking to another hospital chain about maternity bags to be given out. So there are incredible opportunities through these supply chains to use your enterprise and supply development funds, create youth jobs, and build local supply. We're talking to companies who've been importing from China and now want to be able to build this here using township enterprises. I know for many businesses, they hear the word BE and there's an eye roll and there's a fatigue. We've been looking at that scorecard carefully. And if you strategize well on that, you are able to build beautiful, impactful models and really make that scorecard count strategically. It's a great way to move into the development space and get your BE scorecard up. So your points about using enterprise and supply development strategically are very, very well made.
Now, we've also been talking this week and this month, and we should really be talking about it all the time, but in particular, August is Women's Month, and there's a renewed focus on it about things like gender pay gaps and glass ceilings and what's happening in boardrooms across the country. The PwC report came out last week, and it still shows 14% of boards are board positions, or directorships and non-executive directorships are occupied by women, so still lots of work to be done there. You're a leading woman in business. Your leadership approach, particularly as a high-profile female leader, Tash, how have you approached your leadership journey?
They say that in hindsight, you can give very grand statements around the way you do things. For me, when leadership counts is when the going gets tough, and crises like this really molds the way you think. My sense of leadership is be open to things changing on a weekly, daily basis. Try not to have too rigid an approach to things because the world changes so fast. So I try not to plan too far ahead. This might go contrary to some of what we've heard, but we really grow businesses in South Africa in a nursery that isn't a very nurturing space. And leadership in South Africa, I think, is very different to the type of management you might expect in a Nordic country, where, institutions work all the time and, you can make predictable decisions. In South Africa, I think it's a very special type of leadership style that is required. And it is someone who is very resilient, able to roll with the punches, able to push back, because we are an economy that is highly governed by cliques and networks that are very tight. And to achieve impact as a leader in this country, you've got to be strong enough to be disruptive. And as a woman, I can tell you that is a double challenge because people don't like women being disruptive. But if we aren't the types of leaders that will push against the status quo and say, if we do more of the same, expect the same results. So this resilience, that understanding we're in an economy that demands that you punch hard and you're willing to force things through, that a lot of people are very comfortable with the status quo being as it is. And that, I think, is for all leaders, business leaders in our country. I think that's the journey that we're on, is we have to push back and say, what is the country that we want to live and thrive and lead within? And it certainly isn't the South Africa that we're seeing today, but it's going to take work from all of us to be able to create the country that we believe our businesses can thrive in.
Do you get the sense that business is finding its voice? And I think back to the days of Tony Trayer standing up when Anglo felt that the ANC under Thabo Mbeki was overstepping its boundaries, and he very quickly got chopped down at the knees. And then you saw business go quiet. We then saw business find its voice again towards the back end of the Zuma administration around Save SA, and then the Ramaphosa swept in, and business sort of was swept along by it again. I'm getting the sense that business is starting to find its voice again. Would you like to see more from organised business? And then I suppose allied to that question, what keeps you awake at night about South Africa in 2020, Tash?
Well, it's youth employment. It's youth employment. These are our future custodians of the economy. These are, your future customers, your future employees. And when I look at the sheer number of young people, and young people for us is 18 to 35, when I look at the sheer number of people who are not getting the skills and the experiences that they need to take over this economy, it really does worry me. And then there's, the social impacts of young people who are not working and unemployment in general. The loss of dignity and the depression that comes with not being able to provide for your family. I am working in the space, so it may sound a little bit too close to home that I'm too immersed in this data. But really, nationally, if you look at our biggest issue, to have well over half of your working population not working is not sustainable. We need more taxpayers. Our tax-paying base is just too small. If you look at the debts the country is taking on, we've got to build a bigger tax-paying base. We've got to all become contributing citizens. And so that number, if we could bring that down, I would get some sleep.
And the first part of the question, do you think business is doing enough to hold government's feet to the fire of accountability? We've got another Ned Lack-inspired task team that was announced by the presidency overnight. Another task team. How many plans do we have on the table? How many presidential economic advisory councils and committees and imbizos have we had? Isn't it just time to execute what we know needs to be done in the Treasury paper, in Tito's paper?
Yeah, I wish it was that simple. I wish that these moves could be made. I'm not sure what it is inside the machine and the mechanics of it all, because we all know the answers are actually quite simple. We don't need more papers and more discussions. We have great plans. Everything seems to be in the execution, in the arms of government that are there to make things happen. And if we don't improve our operational ability, I'm not sure how another talk shop is going to help. This is just about rolling up sleeves, wading in there and starting to fix. We see the states, our municipalities are in the service delivery, the issues that are going on at the ground, and citizens are tired. I'm speaking as a citizen now, not as the CEO of Yes, but if I am watching the news and seeing yet another task team, if we watch this Zondo Commission unfolding, people want to see action, not more discussion. That time has passed, and I certainly do hope business finds its voice to really take this discussion and raise it to the highest levels. But speaking out today, I'm just one voice. You've got to also, as media, raise the voices of business and make these stories take front page time and time again. Let's hope that our combined voices make a change.
And we have to. We are here. We're committed to this country. We're invested here, Tash. And thank you for giving voice to the voiceless, who are the unemployed youth of this country, who so desperately need you and others like you doing the work that you are doing to help solve for this huge crisis of youth unemployment in the country. Thanks for your time. And let's hope we get some good news from the president when he decides to address the nation.
The first step, Michael, is for businesses to say yes. And then we're going in the right direction.
Tashmia Ismail-Saville, CEO of the Youth Employment Service. Yes, sharing her view from the C-suite, as we certainly need to find new ways to offer hope for the increasingly disenchanted and disenfranchised youth of South Africa. That's a wrap for this week.